Your thoughts are lying to you. Let that sink in for a moment. Every day we wake up and immediately get swept into a storm, notifications, deadlines, responsibilities and 1,000 tiny worries buzzing like static in the background. It's no wonder stress has become the default state for so many of us. And what's worse? The most exhausting part isn't even what's happening around us, it's what's happening inside us. That quiet voice in your head, the one that tells you you're not doing enough, not good enough, not fast enough, that's not truth. That's just noise, learned noise, conditioned noise, and it's lying to you. Modern life has trained our minds to constantly anticipate danger, chase perfection and spiral into worst case scenarios. It's like we've outsourced our peace of mind to the chaos around us. But here's the truth, stress doesn't come from the world, it comes from how we think about the world. Imagine living in a way where no matter what's going on around you, traffic jam, angry boss, financial pressure, relationship drama, you don't collapse into anxiety. You don't get dragged down by overthinking. You feel the waves, but you don't drown in them. In this video, we are going to uncover how your thoughts shape your stress and how you can retrain your mind to become a place of calm, not conflict. You will learn how to build real resilience, not the fake, forced kind, but a grounded inner strength that can carry you through anything. By the end, you will have a clear path to shift from being ruled by reactive thoughts to become the master of your mental world. Let's start untangling the lies and rewiring your thoughts so you can finally breathe again. In this tutorial, you'll gain a clear understanding of how stress truly impacts both your mind and body, far beyond just feeling overwhelmed. You'll discover how your thoughts play a powerful role in shaping your stress response and how much influence you actually have over them. More importantly, you'll learn practical techniques to rewire the way you think so you can manage stress more effectively, feel more grounded in daily life and build real, lasting resilience from the inside out. Let's begin by understanding what stress really does to us, because it's more than just feeling tense or tired. To master it, we first need to see clearly how it affects both our mind and our body on a daily basis. We live in a world that never slows down. And before we can change how we respond to stress, we need to recognize just how deeply it's woven into the fabric of modern life. From the moment we wake up, we are hit with a flood of information. Emails, news alerts, messages, expectations. Our minds barely get a moment to breathe before we are thrown into problem-solving mode. Deadlines loom, bills pile up, relationships demand attention and even our free time is hijacked by comparison, pressure and noise. It's no longer just the big life events that weigh us down. It's the constant low-level tension that never seems to let up. This kind of stress is sneaky. It builds quietly, day after day, until we start thinking it's normal to feel wired, anxious or exhausted all the time. Our bodies stay in a heightened state of alert, our minds spin in circles and the rest becomes something we try to do rather than something we feel. And perhaps the most damaging part, we often blame ourselves for not coping better. But this isn't a personal failing, it's the natural result of a world that demands more than our nervous systems were built to handle. The good news, once we understand this, we can begin to take our power back. Now that we see how constant stress has become part of our everyday lives, let's take a closer look at what it actually does to us. Because the effects go far deeper than just feeling mentally drained or physically tense. Effect 1. Heart disease. When we are stressed, our body floods with hormones like adrenaline, noradrenaline and cortisol, designed to keep us alert and ready to respond. In short bursts, this system works brilliantly. But when stress becomes chronic, the constant rush of these hormones pushes our heart into overdrive. Heart rate stays elevated, blood pressure remains high and the body begins to wear down. Over time, this can lead to serious cardiovascular issues, hypertension, heart attacks, even strokes. One long-term study from the Karolinska Institute found that men working under high pressure, anxiety-inducing supervisors had a 25% greater risk of heart attack over just 10 years. The mind suffers, but the heart pays the price. Effect 2. Memory and cognitive decline. Ironically, stress can briefly sharpen our focus. Adrenaline gives us that burst of clarity in a high-stakes moment. But if stress becomes our baseline, the brain, especially the hippocampus, which is key for learning and memory, starts to suffer. Chronic stress impairs our ability to concentrate, recall information and retain new knowledge. In time, it can even physically shrink brain regions responsible for memory. The longer our brain is soaked in cortisol, the harder it becomes to think clearly, stay focused and even find the right words in a conversation. Effect 3. Stress, genes and epigenetics. Perhaps most surprisingly, stress doesn't just affect us, it can shape the biology of the next generation. In groundbreaking research by Michael Meaning and his team, red pups raised by mothers who showed low care, measured by grooming and licking behavior, developed exaggerated stress responses later in life. Their genes, specifically those involved in stress regulation, were epigenetically altered. But the reverse was also true. Pups raised by nurturing mothers became more resilient and calm and even passed those traits down. Stress, it turns out, can literally reprogram gene expression, and those changes can echo into the next generation. This is the hidden cost of unmanaged stress. It doesn't just make us feel overwhelmed in the moment. It reshapes our health, weakens our memory, and leaves deep biological imprints that last far beyond the stressful event itself. Understanding these effects is the first step in taking back control. And if all of that wasn't already enough, there's an even bigger picture we can't ignore. Stress isn't just impacting individuals, it's fueling a global mental health crisis. Across the world, mental disorders have become one of the greatest challenges of our time. In the UK alone, stress, depression and anxiety led to over 17 million lost workdays in just 1 year, affecting nearly 1 million people. Poor mental health now accounts for half of all work-related illnesses in the country. In the United States, the situation is just as alarming. As of 2020, 40% of adults reported struggling with mental health or substance issues. Even more heartbreaking, 1 in 6 children between the ages of 6 and 17 now suffers from a diagnosable mental health disorder. Depression, anxiety, addiction. These aren't isolated cases anymore, they are becoming the norm. And the consequences are devastating, not just emotionally, but economically and socially. Depression alone costs over $210 billion every year in the US. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death for young people aged 10 to 34. Anxiety disorders, the most common of all, affect 40 million adults, often silently and chronically. This isn't just a health problem, it's a human one. It's about our quality of life, our relationships, our ability to function, connect and thrive. The world we live in is pushing minds to the edge, and it's time we take a serious look at how we heal and protect them. After seeing how widespread and serious mental health challenges have become, it's important to understand the subtle but crucial difference between two of the most commonly misunderstood conditions: burnout and depression. At first glance, they can look similar, both if you're drained, unmotivated and emotionally flat. But underneath the surface, they tell two very different stories. If you ask someone suffering from burnout what they do if they weren't so exhausted, they will likely have a list ready. Travel, take up hobbies, reconnect with loved ones. The desire is still there, they just don't have the energy. Once they rest or take a proper break, their spark often begins to return. Even small pleasures, like a good meal or fun activity, can still bring joy, if only temporarily. Now contrast that with depression. Someone in the grip of depression often can't name anything they want to do, because nothing feels worth doing. The things that once brought joy now feel flat, pointless or even painful. A vacation doesn't help, sleep doesn't restore. In fact, counterintuitively, sleep deprivation might even temporarily lift their mood, underscoring how deeply their brain chemistry has been affected. There are other key differences too. People with burnout often overestimate their capacity, pushing themselves past the point of exhaustion. Those with depression, however, tend to underestimate themselves and may give up quickly, feeling hopeless or inadequate. Burnout can make you irritable or angry. Depression, on the other hand, pulls you into a deeper sadness and emotional numbness. Recognizing the difference matters, not just for compassion, but for healing. Because how we support someone through burnout is very different from how we help someone with depression. And in a world where both are rising, understanding these nuances is a crucial step toward real mental resilience. And now, let's move from understanding the what of stress to the how of managing it in a clear, systematic way. Dr. Gerd Kalusa's stress traffic light gives us 3 entry points to regain control, much like how traffic lights guide us to stop, slow down or go. First, the red lights are the stressors, those external triggers like deadlines, noise, conflict or an overwhelming inbox that makes us tense. You can spot your own by finishing the sentence: I'm stressed when. Then work to reduce or reframe those triggers through better time management or boundary setting. Next come the orange lights, personal stress amplifiers. These are the internal voices: I will never get this done, I must be perfect, I'm not good enough, that turn a manageable task into a crisis. This entry point is especially connected to depression, where negative self-talk and harsh internal judgments can spiral into feelings of hopelessness and low self-worth. Asking yourself, I cause myself stress by, helps reveal these thought patterns, and cognitive techniques can support you in rewiring this internal dialogue from self-sabotage to self-support. Finally, the green lights point to stress reactions, our physical and emotional fallout after pressure peaks. Exhaustion, irritability, mental fog. This phase is closely linked to burnout, where prolonged exposure to stressor leads to chronic fatigue and emotional depletion. Completing, when I'm under stress, I am, helps identify your own symptoms. From there, deploying energy management strategies across physical, movement, sleep, nutrition, emotional, connection, play, mental, mindfulness, focus exercises, and existential purpose values, domains restores balance and builds resilience. By systematically addressing stressors, amplifiers and reactions, you create a comprehensive roadmap for resilience, one that not only quells the immediate alarm bells, but also rewires your long-term responses to life's inevitable challenges. In this tutorial, we will focus primarily on the second entry point, the orange lights, exploring how to identify and transform the internal stress amplifiers that often contribute to depression and undermine our well-being. Building on our focus on the orange lights, the internal stress amplifiers, we now explore the power thoughts have over our experience of stress. Understanding just how much our thinking shapes our feelings and actions is key to learning how to shift from stress to strength. Imagine walking down the street and seeing someone talking out loud to themselves. You might think, that's strange. Why are they doing that? Is everything okay? But pause for a moment. Aren't we doing the same thing all the time, just silently? We all have a voice in our heads, constantly narrating, commenting, planning, judging. These inner conversations are so familiar, we rarely even notice them. Our minds are always talking, thoughts about what we should have said, worries about what might happen next. Self-criticism, rehearsed arguments, imaginary scenarios. It's a continuous stream. Like a radio that never switches off, our brain broadcasts thoughts 24/7. And just like a background radio station, we often tune in without realizing it, absorbing every word, reacting as if it's all true, letting it shape how we feel and what we do. This is how stress creeps in through the back door, not just through events, but through how we think about them. We've seen how our mind acts like a radio, constantly broadcasting thoughts. But there's something even more intriguing. It doesn't just broadcast, it wanders. Have you ever noticed how your thoughts jump from one thing to another without warning? One moment you're reading an email, the next you're thinking about dinner, then suddenly remembering something embarrassing from 5 years ago. This is the nature of the wandering mind. It drifts, jumps, loops, rarely staying in one place for long. And science tells us something fascinating. The more our mind wanders, the less happy we tend to feel. Even if it wanders to something pleasant, we are often less satisfied than when we are simply present with what we are doing. The wandering mind isn't just active, it's restless and it takes us with it. And sometimes the mind doesn't just wander, it spirals. It grabs onto a single worry or idea and then spins a whole story around it. We've all experienced this. We start with one small concern, an upcoming meeting, a strange look from someone, and before we know it, we are deep inside a mental movie where everything has gone wrong. The swirl of thought sucks us deeper and deeper into the stories the mind tells us. It's like quicksand. The more we struggle to get out, the more stuck we feel. Our stress builds, our body reacts, and suddenly we're anxious not because of what's happening now, but because of a chain reaction of thoughts we didn't even mean to follow. This is the thought spiral, and unless we notice it, we get trapped without even realizing it. So what happens when we live in a state of constant mental noise and spiraling thoughts? We shift into autopilot. We go through the motions, answer the emails, make the coffee, attend the meetings, but we are not really there. Our bodies are present, but our minds are elsewhere. Mindlessness takes over. We respond out of habit, not intention. We stop noticing what we are doing, who we are with, and how we are feeling. And the more this becomes our default, the more life begins to blur. Days pass without real awareness, joy, or clarity. Autopilot might feel efficient, but it often disconnects us from what matters most. Let's bring this home with a moment we can all relate to. You open a bag of crisps, sit down for a break, and start thinking about that difficult conversation or the endless to-do list. The next thing you know, the bag is empty. You didn't decide to finish it. You didn't even taste most of it. It just disappeared. That's what happens when the mind checks out. We get so caught up in our thoughts that we stop noticing what's right in front of us. We miss the experience we are actually living because we are lost in the ones our mind is creating. This isn't just about crisps. It's about how often we miss our own lives, not because we are doing something wrong, but because we are not fully here. That moment, the empty bag of crisps and no memory of eating them, isn't just about food. It's a wake-up call. If our thoughts can pull us so far away from the present that we miss the simplest of experience, what else are we missing? Conversations, connections, opportunities, joy. When the mind takes over and we live on autopilot, we are no longer choosing our responses. We are reacting out of habit, fear, or distraction. That's why it's so important to regain control of our thoughts, not to silence them, but to stop letting them run the show. Because the more we let our thoughts guide us without awareness, the further we drift away from the life we actually want to live. If thoughts can pull us out of the present, they can also do something even more powerful. They can reshape our brains. What actually happens in our body when we deeply engage with our thoughts or imagination? Neuroscience offers a fascinating answer. In a groundbreaking study, neuroscientist Alvaro Pascaleone asked one group of participants to physically practice a simple piano exercise, playing to the steady beat of a metronome for 2 hours a day over 5 days. At the end of the week, brain scans revealed a significant expansion in the motor cortex, the area responsible for finger movement. But here's the astonishing part. A second group of participants didn't touch the piano at all. Instead, they simply imagined playing it, mentally rehearsing the finger movements, visualizing each note. The result? Their brains changed too. The same region of the motor cortex expanded despite no physical movement. As Pascal Leone later wrote, a mental practice led to a similar reorganization of the brain. This powerful finding reveals just how much influence our thoughts hold, not just over how we feel, but over our biology itself. If imagination alone can rewire brain structure, imagine the effect our daily stress-driven thought patterns might be having moment by moment. Pascal Leone's experiment showed us that thoughts can physically reshape the brain. But this connection between mind and body isn't limited to neuroscience labs. It plays out in our everyday experiences too. Let's take a simple example. A ripe yellow lemon. Now imagine this. This morning I had the pleasure of holding a freshly picked, sun-ripened lemon in my hand. I ran my fingers over the bright yellow peel and felt the tiny pits that adorned it. As I held this aromatic citrus fruit to my nose, I breathed in the wonderful scent it exuded and felt a sense of freshness, energy and zest. Then I placed the lemon on a chopping board and carefully cut it in half. I took one of the halves in my hand, brought it to my mouth and let a drop of the fresh, sour lemon juice land on the tip of my tongue. Pause for a moment. Did your mouth begin to water? For many of us, just reading and imagining that experience triggered a real physical reaction. Saliva production. No lemon, no cutting board, just thought. This is the power of mental imagery. Our bodies respond to thoughts not just emotionally, but physiologically. This everyday example reinforces a profound truth. Our thoughts don't just stay in our heads, they echo through our entire body. We've just seen how the simple thought of a lemon can cause a physical reaction. But this mind-body connection goes even further. Our thoughts shape how we experience the world. Consider what happens when we are absorbed in a gripping crime novel or movie. As the tension builds and the murder unfolds on the page, our bodies respond as if the threat were real. We feel uneasy, our stomach tightens, our breath shortens. There's no actual danger, just words on a page, but our thoughts bring the scene to life. The story becomes our temporary reality. Now consider this in our own internal dialogue. When we think, I'm worthless, we don't usually stop to question it. We absorb it as a fact. When we repeat, I'm doomed to fail, we begin to behave as if failure is guaranteed. Our thoughts don't just pass through us. They define the lens through which we see ourselves and the world. Whether encouraging or destructive, thoughts have the power to shape our physical responses, our emotions and our behavior. And sometimes, a single thought can change the entire course of our day or even our life. We see how powerfully our thoughts can shape our reality. But why do they have such a strong grip on us? In our minds, two powerful effects are constantly at play. First, the mind acts like a waterfall, an endless stream of thoughts, opinions, judgments and memories. Second, the mind tries to convince us that these thoughts are not just ideas, but facts. It says, this is how things really are. This is where the concept of cognitive fusion comes in. Fusion happens when we become entangled with our thoughts, when we treat them as absolute truth instead of mental activity. We stop noticing that we are thinking and instead we become the thought itself. I'm not good enough. This will never work. She must be angry with me. In a fused state, we don't pause to ask if these thoughts are accurate. We simply accept them, live by them and react to them. But here's the truth. Thoughts are not facts. They are mental events, temporary, flexible and often distorted by emotion or habit. The key is not to stop thinking, it's to learn to see our thoughts rather than blindly following them. Think about a time when a single thought changed what you did or didn't do. Maybe you wanted to speak up in a meeting, but the thought, I will sound stupid, popped up. And just like that, you stayed silent. Or perhaps you thought, I will never stick to this, and so you quit before even starting. This is the quiet power of fusion. When we fuse with a thought, believe it completely, it begins to steer our behavior. Not based on what's real, but based on what the mind says is real. We don't take that leap, not because we can't, but because the thought told us we would fail. We don't try again, not because it's impossible, but because the mind whispered, what's the point? In this way, fusion doesn't just color our experience, it limits our freedom. It narrows our choices, dims our courage and locks us into patterns that don't serve us. The more we believe every thought without question, the more we let those thoughts run our lives. But the moment we step back and see a thought for what it really is, a string of words, not a command, we begin to open the door to new possibilities. Our brains are wired to pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. As Rick Hanson puts it, your brain is like Velcro for negative experiences. This means that negative thoughts, worries, fears, criticisms cling tightly to our attention. They stick around longer and feel more intense than positive thoughts. This Velcro effect explains why bad news, criticism or failure often loom larger in our minds than good news, praise or success. On the flip side, our brains are like Teflon for positive experiences. Positive events, compliments, achievements, joyful moments tend to slide right off our awareness. They don't stick as well, often fading quickly from memory. This means we may undervalue or overlook the good things in life even when they happen frequently. Understanding this Teflon effect helps us explain why it can be challenging to cultivate lasting happiness and resilience. Recognizing this natural bias is the first step toward rewiring our brain to hold on to the positive as much as the negative. We've seen how our minds cling to negative experiences like Velcro and let positive ones slide away like Teflon. But why does this happen? The answer lies deep in our evolutionary past. Over 99% of human history was spent in survival mode. Our brains evolved to keep us alive. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors faced constant threats, like avoiding a saber-toothed tiger stalking nearby, finding scarce food, or escaping other dangers. This meant our minds developed a powerful negativity bias, a relentless stream of warnings, doubts, and fears designed to alert us to potential threats. Only those who could anticipate danger and act quickly were able to survive and pass on their genes. So, this flood of negative thoughts isn't a flaw, it's an ancient survival tool hardwired into our brains. Understanding this helps us see why our minds can feel like a storm of worry and why learning to navigate it is so important for our well-being today. The saber-toothed tiger may be long gone, but our brains still operate in the same ancient survival principles. Instead of fearing wild predators, our minds now focus on modern dangers. Will I lose my job? What if I embarrass myself in public? Could my health take a sudden downturn? Am I being accepted by others? Though these threats look very different from those our ancestors faced, they trigger the same hardwired negativity bias, flooding us with worries and fears. Our brain survival system is on high alert even when the dangers are mostly social or psychological. Recognizing this helps us understand why stress feels so intense even when there's no immediate physical threat. We've seen how our brains are still wired for survival, clinging to negative experiences like Velcro, brushing off the positive like Teflon. But under intense stress, the mind doesn't just worry, it hands over the controls to our most primitive system, the reptilian brain. That's when the fight-flight-freeze response takes over. This ancient mechanism, designed to protect us from physical threats like wild animals, still kicks in today, even though the dangers we face are often social or psychological. A conflict at work, a critical email, a personal crisis, any of these can trigger our internal alarm system. When this happens, we don't respond with calm, thoughtful action. We react instinctively and unconsciously. In fight mode, we become defensive, confrontational, hypervigilant. In flight mode, we withdraw, avoid, or try to escape the situation altogether. And in freeze mode, we shut down, overwhelmed, stuck, unable to act, even if the threat is only perceived. These responses aren't flaws. They are survival strategies deeply embedded in our biology. But the challenge is that they often pull us away from who we want to be. We might say something we regret, avoid something important, or miss the chance to act with intention. That's why understanding the fight-flight-freeze response matters. Because the more aware we become of how stress hijacks our behavior, the more we can start to reclaim our freedom to choose, especially in moments that matter most. After exploring the fight-flight-freeze response, it's worth looking more closely at one of its most common expressions in modern life, the instinct to flee from emotional discomfort. Let's imagine a familiar scenario. You lose your job and feel overwhelmed by sadness, fear, or shame. These emotions are uncomfortable, perhaps even unbearable. And instinctively, your mind wants to escape. This is the flight response in action, not by physically running away, but by turning away from what we feel. In these moments, we often reach for anything that offers temporary relief. We avoid our grief not by solving it, but by sidestepping it. Maybe we dive into distractions, overwork ourselves, binge on media, or look for comfort in substances. On the surface, it seems harmless, even helpful. After all, who wouldn't want a break from pain? But here's the deeper issue. When we avoid our emotions instead of addressing them, we are not healing, we are postponing. And the feelings we try to outrun, they don't disappear. They wait, and often they return louder than before. This sets the stage for our next escape route, artificial pleasure. When emotional pain lingers and our urge to escape intensifies, we may find ourselves slipping into what could be called an exile of artificial pleasure. This is more than simple distraction. It's a full retreat into short-term highs to mask long-term lows. Take, for example, someone dealing with heartbreak, loss, or professional failure. Rather than sitting with the discomfort, they might seek temporary refuge in alcohol, partying, awaiting, or digital overload. These moments can feel like sweet relief, a brief holiday from the inner storm. But the problem isn't just that the escape is short-lived. It's that it comes at a cost. The morning after the party, the problems remain, and now they're joined by a hangover, emotional fatigue, and a deeper sense of emptiness. So the cycle repeats. More numbing, more disconnection, more pain. What starts as a coping mechanism becomes a trap. Artificial pleasures may soothe symptoms, but they can't heal the root. Instead, they fuel a spiral that leaves us more exhausted, more confused, and further from the life we truly want. These quick fix strategies don't make us weak, they make us human. But understanding their limitations is the first step toward breaking the cycle. Because lasting relief doesn't come from escape. It comes from courageously turning toward what hurts and learning how to hold it with compassion and wisdom. After recognizing the trap of artificial pleasure, the question becomes, what now? If escaping doesn't work long term, we need healthier ways to meet our discomfort. This is where intentional tools and techniques come in, not to silence our thoughts or erase our emotions, but to relate to them differently. By learning how to rewire our thinking and manage stress more effectively, we shift from reacting out of habit to responding with clarity and choice. The goal isn't to never feel anxious or overwhelmed. It's to build the inner capacity to face those feelings with steadiness rather than escape. In the next slides, we'll explore practical strategies that help us move away from avoidance to awareness, from short-term relief to long-term resilience. To truly shift out of the cycle of avoidance and artificial relief, we need a way to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. That's where the A.A.A.A approach comes in, a simple but powerful framework for navigating stress with awareness and alignment. The first A is for attention. Bring mindful awareness to the present moment, notice what's happening inside and out without immediately reacting. The second A is for acceptance. Allow your thoughts and feelings to be there, even if they're uncomfortable. You don't have to like them, but you also don't have to fight them. The third A is for anchor. Connect to your core values. Ask yourself what truly matters to you in this moment beyond the stress or fear. And finally, A is for action. Take one small step that reflects those values even in the face of discomfort. This approach helps us move from instinctive reaction to intentional response, so we are not just surviving the moment, but growing through it. At its core, the A.A.A approach helps us to do something deceptively simple, yet deeply powerful: to become aware. Aware of the worries, the negative thoughts, and the internal narratives that fuel our stress and quietly pull us away from what truly matters. These thoughts often go unnoticed, yet they shape our actions and steer us off course, away from our values, our purpose, and the life we want to live. By applying the A.A.A method, we bring this process into the light. We learn to notice our thoughts, attention, accept their presence without resistance, acceptance, reconnect with what matters most, anchor, and take meaningful steps into that direction, action. Over time, this shifts everything. Not only does our stress reduce, because we are no longer blindly fused with every fearful thought, but we also begin to live with greater purpose and engagement. We stop reacting out of fear and start responding with clarity. And in doing so, we align our lives with our dreams, our values, and the kind of person we truly want to be. This isn't just stress management, it's the path to a more grounded, courageous, and fulfilling life. To understand why holding on to worries is so draining, consider this metaphor. A psychology tutor held up a glass of water and asked, "How heavy do you think this glass is?" Answers range from 200 to 700 grams. The tutor explained, "The actual weight doesn't matter. What matters is how long the glass is held. Held for 1 minute, no problem. After an hour, the arm begins to ache. Held all day, the arm becomes numb and paralyzed. The glass stays the same weight, but the longer it's held, the heavier it feels." This is how worries and stress affect people. A passing thought is manageable, but dwelling on it for too long becomes overwhelming. The key is to recognize when the glass is being held too tightly and to learn to put it down. Just as holding onto worries makes the glass of water feel heavier over time, trying to push negative thoughts away often backfires. Our natural instinct is to control or banish unwanted thoughts, but this usually makes them louder and more persistent. To see this in action, try the famous polar bear experiment described by Fyodor Dostoevsky. For 2 minutes, try not to think about a polar bear. Chances are, the image of a polar bear keeps creeping into your mind. This shows a simple truth. The more we try not to think about something, the more it dominates our thoughts. So rather than battling negative thoughts head on, we need a different way to relate to them. One that helps us step back and regain control. Building on the polar bear experiment, I want to share a personal story from a camping trip with my girlfriend in the Swiss mountains. We pitched our tent at about 2,500 meters with an incredible view of the Eiger, Mönch and Jungfrau. After watching the sunset and stargazing, we settled in for a peaceful night. But our quiet night was soon interrupted by a herd of cows grazing nearby. Their bells rang non-stop and we could hear them sniffing and moving around our tent. I tried several times to chase them away, but the cows kept coming back. We faced two choices. Stay awake all night, stressed and annoyed, or accept the cows' presence and focus on what mattered most, getting some rest. Once we accepted the cows and stopped fighting them, we finally managed to fall asleep. These cows became a perfect metaphor for negative thoughts. Just like the cows, worries and self-doubt, "I'm not good enough" or "I will never succeed," often return no matter how hard we try to push them away. The lesson? We can only live fully aligned with our values when we learn to accept negative thoughts instead of battling them. Just like accepting the cows help bring peace, there's another simple way to understand how to relate to our thoughts. Imagine a glass filled with sparkling water. Inside, bubbles rise to the surface, some small, some big. They appear, float upward, and then pop and disappear. Our thoughts work the same way. They come and go, sometimes quickly, sometimes lingering, but they don't have to control us. By simply noticing these bubbles without trying to stop or fight them, we practice acceptance. Watching the bubbles rise and pass reminds us that thoughts are temporary. They don't have to define our experience or distract us from what truly matters. This mindset opens the door to freedom from stress and helps us stay anchored in our values. When we label thoughts as wrong or bad, we add unnecessary struggle and resistance. Instead, acceptance invites us to simply observe what's happening inside, welcoming thoughts and emotions with curiosity and kindness. This non-judgmental awareness creates a space between us and our mental noise, reducing stress and preventing us from getting stuck. By practicing acceptance without judgment, we regain control over our reactions and open the way to more peaceful, value-driven living. Building on acceptance without judgment, the next crucial step is learning to observe our thoughts without automatically believing them as absolute truth. Often, we experience what's called fusion, where we merge completely with our thoughts, treating them as facts rather than just mental events. This is where diffusion techniques come in. Their goal isn't to eliminate thoughts, which is impossible, but to create distance between us and our thoughts so we don't get caught up in their stories. When the mind floods us with negative or repetitive thoughts, diffusion gives us tools to step back, recognize these as just thoughts, and reduce their hold over us. Diffusion technique 1. A simple way to start is with gratitude. When a worrying thought arises, we say inwardly, "Thank you for the warning, dear mind." This expresses genuine appreciation for the brain's effort to protect us while letting the thought fade away naturally. No fight, just kind acceptance with a touch of humor. The second technique helps us create even more distance by changing how we phrase our thoughts. If a negative thought sounds like "I'm incapable" or "I'm inadequate," it means we are fused with that thought, fully identifying with it. To diffuse, we frame it by saying, "I have the thought that I am incapable." Even better is to step back further and observe. I realize that I have the thought that I'm incapable. This shift from being the thought to having the thought breaks fusion and lets us see thoughts as separate from who we truly are. The third technique uses humor and play to loosen the grip of negative thoughts. Take a destructive thought and turn it into a silly song, maybe to the tune of Happy Birthday or Jingle Bells. Or imagine hearing it in a funny cartoon voice like Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. This playful twist makes the thought lose its seriousness and power, often bringing a smile and lightening the emotional load. Trying to resist painful feelings often makes the pain worse, just like holding a melting ice cube tightly in your hand. If you grasp the ice cube with a clenched fist and fight the cold, the discomfort intensifies and can even hurt. But if you hold the same ice cube gently in an open palm, accepting its presence without struggle, the pain is much less severe. This simple metaphor shows how acceptance eases emotional suffering while resistance amplifies it. Psychologist Christine F. sums it up simply with the equation: suffering equals pain multiplied with resistance. Imagine pain on a scale from 1 to 100, with 100 being the most intense. If the pain is at 100 and resistance is also at 100, full fight against it, suffering skyrockets to 10,000. But if resistance drops to just 1, suffering falls to 100. And at 0 resistance, complete acceptance, suffering is nearly eliminated. This shows how reducing resistance to painful emotions can dramatically ease our suffering. In early childhood, I experienced this painful equation firsthand. At family dinners, whenever I felt upset, I had a habit of grabbing an object and shouting, "I'm going to throw it now." One evening, as steaming potatoes were placed on the table, I repeated my usual pattern of anger. I picked up a scalding hot potato and threatened to throw it. But almost immediately, I felt the burning heat in my hand. Instead of letting go, which should have been acceptance, I clenched the potato even tighter, resisting the pain. As a result, the initial burn intensified and I suffered much more than if I had simply released it. This early experience taught me how resistance can magnify pain, while acceptance can ease it. Imagine facing an unwanted situation like a powerful wave in the ocean. If we fight against the wave, we become overwhelmed, tossed around by its force. But if we let go of resistance and ride the wave with acceptance, we find balance. By embracing the situation instead of struggling, we create space to connect with our values. From there, we can act consciously and choose our response, rather than being swept away by the wave. Acceptance turns overwhelm into opportunity for mindful action. We've seen how acceptance is important, but to which thoughts should we really listen? Imagine you're in a supermarket where background music plays non-stop. Your mind is like that too. Thoughts are always playing like background noise. But you only really notice and focus on your favorite song, humming along, fully tuned in. The same goes for thoughts. They are always present, but we don't have to give them full attention. Instead, we can accept them simply as background noise and choose to focus only on those that are helpful. Helpful thoughts are the ones that guide us closer to our values and what truly matters. By accepting all thoughts without judgment and focusing on what serves us, we stay aligned with our purpose. Just like with the supermarket music, here's another metaphor to guide us. Imagine standing at a busy train station, watching trains come and go, just like our thoughts. You don't have to get on every train that passes by. Instead, you choose to board only the trains that take you closer to your destination, your aspirations, values, purpose. These are the trains that lead you toward the life you truly want to live. After exploring acceptance deeply, it's time to anchor ourselves in what truly matters, our values. To do this effectively, it's important to distinguish between values and goals. Values are our long-term fundamental beliefs, stable and constant, guiding how we live and make decisions. They represent what's deeply important, like empathy or inspiring others. Goals, on the other hand, are specific, measurable and time-bound achievements, short to medium-term milestones such as getting married or becoming a CEO. While goals drive action, they gain true meaning only when aligned with our values. By grounding goals in our values, we create a fulfilling life with purpose and direction. Once we have anchored ourselves in our values, the next essential step is to act on them. This means taking the steering wheel of our lives with courage and determination. It requires creating momentum and summoning the willpower to make choices that truly reflect who we are. Authentic action, aligned with our values, empowers us to live purposefully and confidently, no longer held back by fear or hesitation. To summarize, in order to lead a fulfilled life, it's crucial not to suppress our thoughts and feelings, but to accept them, acceptance, and harmonize our actions, action, with our anchored values, anchors. The key to success in life ultimately lies in living according to our values. 20 years from now, we will regret the opportunities we've missed rather than the ones we took. Thus, we should dare to take risks and follow the path of our purpose, vision, and values. The concept of acceptance, anchor, action may seem sensible and logical to most of us. However, it is important to be extremely mindful to actually apply it in our everyday lives. Otherwise, we may find ourselves unconsciously caught up in a maelstrom of negative thoughts and narratives for a while. At the same time, we run the risk of forgetting to apply techniques such as defusion when negative or destructive thoughts arise. In the next slides, we will therefore take a closer look at strategies for developing attention and mindfulness. Imagine a snow globe filled with swirling glitter or snowflakes. When you shake it, the snow inside swirls chaotically, making it hard to see clearly through the glass. This is like your mind when it's busy, stressed or overwhelmed with thoughts and emotions. Everything feels scattered, unsettled and confusing. Now if you put the snow globe down and let it sit still, over time the glitter settles to the bottom and the water becomes clear. This is like practicing mindfulness. By gently observing your thoughts and feelings without reacting, you allow your mind to settle. As the mental snow settles, your mind becomes calm, clear and able to see things more clearly and peacefully. Just like the snow globe settles when left undisturbed, our minds find clarity when we focus on the present moment. The present is the only time we truly have. The past is gone and the future is uncertain. By anchoring ourselves in the here and now, we reduce the noise of overwhelming thoughts and worries. This awareness allows us to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, giving us greater control over our emotions and actions. Embracing the present moment is a powerful step toward inner calm, clarity and living a life aligned with what truly matters. Our minds are often full, crowded with endless thoughts, worries and distractions. This mindful state can leave us feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from what's important. Being mindful means consciously choosing to focus on the present moment, observing thoughts and feelings without judgment or getting lost in them. Mindfulness helps us create space between our experience and our reaction, leading to greater peace, clarity and intentional living. When our minds dwell predominantly on the past, we often get caught up in feelings of guilt, regret, sorrow, sadness and unforgiveness. These thoughts can weigh heavily on us, trapping us in a cycle of pain and limiting our ability to move forward. While reflecting on the past can sometimes offer lessons, excessive focus keeps us stuck in old stories that no longer serve us. Similarly, when our attention turns mostly to the future, the mind fills with apprehension, anxiety, tension, stress, worry and fear. The uncertainty of what's to come can overwhelm us and distract us from what really matters. The future is yet to unfold, and while planning is useful, obsessing over it steals our energy and joy. To better understand how to gain and maintain attention, it helps to explore the dual self model. The first is a thinking self. This self is responsible for generating thoughts, making judgments, planning, analyzing, comparing and letting the imagination run free. It actively engages in the mental stories and chatter that often fill our minds. Along with creating thoughts, the thinking self constantly evaluates and judges them. It labels experiences as good or bad, right or wrong, helpful or unhelpful. These judgments can sometimes trap us in cycles of negativity or self-criticism, pulling our focus away from the present moment. In contrast, the observing self simply watches without judgment. It remains in a calm state of awareness, maintaining attention and focus. This self notices the thoughts and stories created by the thinking self but does not engage or react. Learning to connect with the observing self allows us to step back from mental noise and find clarity. Imagine taking a peaceful walk after a brief rain shower when suddenly the sun breaks through the clouds, casting a breathtaking sunset of warm, glowing colors across the sky. In this moment, the observing self is fully engaged, calmly witnessing the beauty without interference. But then, the thinking self jumps in with thoughts like, "This sunset is incredible, I should take a photo to share with friends." Suddenly, the direct serene connection with the sunset is broken as attention shifts from the observing self to the thinking self. This example shows how our minds constantly move between simply observing and actively thinking, shaping how we experience life. To sum up, the thinking self is the part of our mind that creates thoughts, plans and judgments, often pulling us into stories and distractions. The observing self, on the other hand, remains aware and present without judgment, simply noticing what is happening inside and around us. Developing awareness of these two selves and learning to strengthen the observing self helps us gain control over our attention, reduce mental clutter and live more fully in the present moment. Building on how the observing self simply witnesses experiences like the sunset, mindfulness is the practice of intentionally paying attention to the present moment with openness and without judgment. It means observing thoughts, feelings and sensations as they arise without trying to change, suppress or cling to them. Mindfulness invites us to be fully present, accepting whatever shows up with curiosity and kindness, allowing us to create space between ourselves and our automatic reactions. Mindfulness exercises don't aim to eliminate thoughts, but to strengthen the mindfulness muscle. By regularly noticing when we get caught up in judgments or negative thoughts and gently letting go, we create space between stimulus and reaction. In this space lies the freedom to choose actions aligned with our deepest values. Imagine being caught in a non-stop waterfall of thoughts, the mind's narratives overwhelming us. Mindfulness helps us become observers of this process. When we notice we are swept away by thoughts, we gently take a step to the side, shifting attention back to the present moment. The thinking self fades and the observing self becomes active again. These exercises help us see our thoughts neutrally, strengthening our attention control and promoting conscious awareness. Focused mindfulness often starts with simple breath awareness. For 5 minutes, attention rests on sensations of breathing, air flowing in and out through the nostrils. When the mind wanders, gently bring your focus back to the breath. Combining this with diffusion techniques like quietly saying "thank you mind" to distracting thoughts can deepen the practice. Regular breath exercises reduce stress hormones and improve our ability to respond consciously, not instinctively. Another common practice is the body scan, where attention moves slowly through the body, noticing sensations without judgment. This practice increases bodily awareness and helps anchor attention in the present moment, fostering relaxation and grounding. Beyond focused mindfulness, the other category is about weaving mindfulness into everyday activities like housework, driving, showering or shopping. Instead of focusing on the breath, attention shifts to the activity itself. When thoughts wander or stories arise, we practice acceptance and diffusion, gently bringing focus back to the present task. Two helpful techniques support this. Trigger points. Use everyday moments like red traffic lights, waiting in line or opening a door as reminders to check in with your mental state. Are you caught in a story? Notice it, then return your attention to the here and now. Physical cues. Often, bodily signals reveal mental shifts before we realize them. For example, a sudden change in facial expression, from subtle smile to a serious look, can signal drifting into negativity. This serves as a gentle prompt to re-anchor in the present. As we integrate mindfulness into our daily lives, it's important to be aware of common misconceptions that can hinder our progress. When I first started practicing mindfulness breathing exercises, I misunderstood its purpose in two important ways. First, I tried to stop all thoughts from arising during the exercises and became frustrated when I couldn't. Instead of practicing acceptance, I allowed feelings like anger and frustration to build up. Second, I constantly observed myself throughout the day to catch moments when I judged or lost mindfulness. But this approach felt mechanical and harsh, like acting as my own strict policeman, which only increased my stress and left me feeling detached and numb. Over time, I began to question the true meaning of mindfulness practice. My perspective shifted when I realized that thoughts will never fully disappear and that the goal of mindfulness exercises is not to eliminate thoughts but to strengthen the mindfulness muscle and promote relaxation. However, it was only when I anchored my values and committed to acting in accordance with them that mindfulness truly became meaningful and sustainable in my daily life. Putting the A.A.A.A methodology into practice offers a clear, effective way to manage stress and live in alignment with our deepest values. This approach centers on 4 key components: attention, acceptance, anchor, and action. By cultivating each of these steps, we develop resilience against stress amplifiers and create a meaningful, balanced life. Attention is the foundation of mindfulness. It helps us notice when we become caught up in unhelpful stories or negative thought patterns. By sharpening our attention, we can observe these thoughts without getting lost in them, giving us the space to respond consciously rather than react impulsively. Acceptance means embracing our thoughts and emotions as they arise without resistance or judgment. Instead of fighting painful feelings or trying to suppress them, we learn to make room for them. This acceptance creates a solid foundation for inner peace and self-compassion. Once we have accepted our experience, we anchor ourselves in our core values, the principles that give our life meaning and direction. These values act as a compass, guiding us toward choices and behaviors that align with who we truly want to be. Action is the step where we translate our attention, acceptance and values into concrete behaviors. It requires courage, willpower and momentum to consistently act in ways that reflect our authentic selves. Taking aligned action leads to a fulfilling and purpose-driven life. Instead of getting caught up in fearful, stress-generating thoughts that hold us back from pursuing our dreams, aspirations, purpose and values, we learn to become aware of these thoughts and gently detach from them. We apply diffusion techniques and accept them without judgment, then anchor ourselves in our core values, allowing us to take meaningful action that truly reflects who we want to be and what we want to achieve. While the A.A.A.A approach is effective for managing most personal stress amplifiers, it has its limits when we are in environments that fundamentally oppose our values. For example, in toxic relationships or unhealthy workplaces, our core values constantly clash with those around us. This ongoing conflict triggers our brain's alarm system, flooding us with negative thoughts like a relentless machine gun. In such cases, we would need to rely heavily and continuously on diffusion techniques just to keep up. In these situations, it may be wiser to consider seeking environments more aligned with our values. Although negative thoughts will still occur, they will be less intense and frequent, allowing us to apply stress management techniques more effectively and reduce our overall stress level. Now that we've covered foundational methods like the A.A.A.A approach, it's important to recognize that managing stress effectively often requires a combination of tools and ongoing learning. There are various solutions available to help you rewire your thoughts and build lasting resilience. Let's start by exploring some key resources that offer deep insights and practical guidance. One valuable starting point is the book The Mindset Challenger, which explores energy management across physical, emotional, mental and existential dimensions. The emotional energy section focuses specifically on managing stress. Complementing this is the Energy Management Planner workbook, a hands-on guide to applying these concepts in daily life. Both resources are available on Amazon and accessible via the Mindset Challenger website. To further enhance your understanding, an online course on Udemy offers an engaging way to explore these topics at your own pace. This course complements the book's content and includes practical exercises to help integrate stress management strategies into your life. You can find direct links on the Mindset Challenger website. For those seeking an immersive experience, a 2-day intensive course is available for you and your team to kickstart transformation and build resilience quickly. If you prefer individual guidance, personalized one-on-one coaching sessions are also offered. Reach out directly or visit the Mindset Challenger website for more details and bookings. These practices are not just theoretical, they've been tested and applied successfully in both business and personal contexts. But don't just take my word for it. Explore testimonials and feedback from participants who have experienced meaningful change. Check out the Mindset Challenger website to learn more. To wrap up, managing stress effectively is less about eliminating difficult thoughts and feelings and more about how we relate to them. By practicing attention and acceptance, we create space to observe our experiences without being overwhelmed. Anchoring ourselves in our core values then gives us clear direction, empowering us to take action that truly aligns with what matters most. This holistic approach, attention, acceptance, anchor and action, offers a practical path to navigate life's challenges with greater resilience and purpose. However, it's also important to recognize that no single method fits every situation perfectly. Sometimes we need additional support or a shift in our environment to fully thrive. The key takeaway is that through awareness, acceptance and intentional living rooted in values, we can break free from the cycle of stress and fear and start moving confidently toward a more fulfilling life. It's a journey that requires patience and practice, but one that ultimately leads to greater peace, clarity and meaning. I want to finish with a final inspiration that captures the essence of this journey. Not all thoughts are truths, some are just burdens we carry unnecessarily.